Here we are in the say more section that I mentioned in the interview. Damn it. We took a break, went to the bathroom, and I was just like, thank you for these people in this life. Thank you for people like Patty. Thank you for people like Don. Thank you for people like Tom, Roger, Aaron.
Werner.
Thank you for everybody. Eddie, Werner, everybody. I mean, thank you for people willing and wanting to have these conversations, but then also thank you for the people in our lives that hold space for the utter chaos that can unfold at any moment. I think that interview speaks for itself in a lot of ways. I'm definitely going to have to go back and listen to that and rewatch that moment. It's fascinating, and I know we've talked about this. I think what's great, and happy to be the jester that fell for the trap of ego this time, but I think it's important to showcase that moment that we've talked about, as you know, especially with the mushroom trip or different, of tripping over the wanting there to be more, or attached to the idea that there is more. And you know, Don held amazing space and Patty held amazing space, but what's so fascinating about the way she described her experience and how she there's just times where it was just like, yes, and that's all there is, right? That's all there needs to be, is that's the one word that needs to answer. And what an affirmation, what a reflection of how much more we crave all the time. More story, more drama, more of anything, more of an answer. I need more of an answer. There has to be more questions. There has to be more answers. And what an amazing example of how, even sitting with one of the most relevant spiritual teachers now, Adyashanti, there was no questions. And Adyashanti had no answers for her no questions. It was an example of a perfect piece of two people realizing what awareness and present momentness is.
Yeah, I remember a great example of this, and it's just really the ego wanting more, like you're saying, the more that we want. I remember Oprah was interviewing Eckhart Tolle, and he said she said, "Well, Eckhart, you know, like you said to do mindful walking and do really slow." So she said, "You know, I took like 10 minutes to walk up like 5 stairs, and I felt every toe and everything, and then I got to the bathroom and I felt my hand on the toothbrush, and then, you know, after 10, 15 minutes of this, I was like, okay, what? So now what? Like what? Why am I doing this?" Right? So when we first are doing some of these practices, the ego wants more. Mm-hmm. But it's like it's cultivating. It's because there's so much going on all the time. But there's a lot going on when once you allow everything to drop away, and that's why it's so helpful to do. You know, the senses is be aware, your sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, to be in the present moment, away from the thinking about it, but just being here now. Because I mean, you think about what's going on in your body, billions of cells in order to have this experience, and what you can see in your peripheral vision, what you can hear, what you can smell, you know, just in that moment without any conversation about it. So what that's doing, those practices of the stillness, of not answering, of not creating words around an experience, is the words aren't even describing it, because it's like, on one hand, it's you're addicted to the thinking and addicted to the story about it. But once you really have the experience of presence, mm-hmm. of the essence of presence, and you really dive, there's like, it's so interesting, and it's like ecstatic.
Yeah,
it's amazingly ecstatic, but we're so full of the story around that experience and describing it that it seems boring at first.
Yes. And there's a contrast in the early stages of having that relationship with awareness, like you're talking about, is those practices to bring awareness into your present moment. There's contrast between not being aware or having the story and then awareness. It's like looking at a different world. You get this vast contrast between the two things. It's the word that keeps popping in my head, is this contrast of like this and that, this and that. And I think the more you live in the present moment, live in that awareness, or maintain focus on the awareness, the more those two things kind of muddle together and become one thing, and then it just becomes all awareness, and then you don't have this, well, now I'm aware, now I'm not aware, now I'm aware, now I'm not aware. You don't have that back and forth as much, but there's still this wantingness to be attached to either one. You want to be attached to the stories, but you also want to be attached to the waking up. And what kind of struck me, I think what really derailed my train in that conversation was kind of in the middle of it, in that moment of silence, there was this feeling of we're never not aware.
Mm-hmm.
We're never not aware. There's this identity that is constantly trying to convince us we aren't. There's this ego, there's this thing, there's this trap or this physical reality that is trying to programming, that is convincing us that we're not as aware as we could be. And that's the thing with awareness, is there is no awareness of more awareness, less awareness. There's just how much of your focus is on that awareness and how much of your focus is on programming or ego. And that was what really startled me in that moment that she's talking about, that surrender, because like the question kind of hit my mind was, well, have you surrendered? I was like, it feels like that's all I do. and then it's like, well, what do you get from that? Nothing more than I already have, but definitely not as much of the less of me. I know that's a weird thing to say, but I don't have the less part of me when I surrender. And I just, it's a strange thing to discuss. And at some point you stop discussing it, or you can't discuss it anymore. But the vastness of emotional piece that was in her story about dropping to her knees and surrendering, and take this too, it's like there's beauty in that. There's a lot of beauty in that. There's a lot of peace and I don't know, that really shook me, and I'm sure it's going to shake me more. I'm sure it's going to hit me again when I re-listen to this interview. But what an example of just aware peace and present moment.
And that mirror that you talked about that you felt with Dawn.
Yeah.
Just that clarity, that clear mirror reflection.
Yeah, and I think what the other part that really struck me was the, what are you afraid to be about yourself, or what part of yourself? Because she said that what you get in that moment, what you get in that surrender, is you get to be who you are. And I don't know that I've ever asked that question, or I've never meditated on that question, and like I said, there was a definite, I was, my chest, not just my heart, but my whole kind of chest was like, I don't want to say vibrating, but there was stuff there. There was movement. There was energy there, and there was just fear of letting go of even the stories that I'm convinced about myself, who I am who I am to me, and who I am still attached to me, the Well, I can't be this way because this is who I am. Are you? Well, I can't be this way because this is who I am. Are you? But I'm not this. Aren't you? And there's, I think all that stuff kind of hit me at once, and there was just this massive, massive expanse of why do I even care about being afraid of something that's drawing the true nature of myself out? There is a gravity. I mean, she called me out on a Zoom podcast in a way that you've called me out in a lot of ways of what are you afraid of saying, or what are you afraid of doing, or what are you afraid of being? And I don't know. I don't know. It feels like stepping off a cliff. That's what that fear feels like.
Right. Well, Adi Shanti describes it like that. It's the fear of the annihilation of the ego, of the nothingness, of the void. It's really a fear of being non-existent.
Yeah. Well, and then the internal, the spirit voice kind of said, are you afraid of accomplishing the task that you've set out to accomplish? And I kind of was like, no, I'm afraid to trust. I'm afraid to have faith in something that has given me no reason not to have faith in it. That gravity, that intuition. I was thinking about that, and I meditated on that today. Of this is one of the things that kind of came up in the Don conversation for me after the fact. I think I might have mentioned that. I'm like, this is going to fuck me up for about a week. This is not going to help at all. But it's, there's this, because I've been really struggling with, I think the programming that each day I have to do something that has a monetary value. That's something right now. That's a programming that is sticky for me right now. And I've been dealing with that. And instead of, and I actually have made a practice of waking up and saying, what is there to do today? What do I do today? Not, okay, I have to do this today because this is this and this and this and this, and really staying focused on the practice of, I don't want to say eradicating that pattern, but starting a new pattern of how I'm called to walk. And how I'm called to walk is, here you are, here's your practice, and then do from there. That's kind of that's what's speaking to me is wake up, meditate, and then move from that meditation. Move from what that meditation brings to you. And I'm really challenged right now in my life. I'm being challenged to maintain that relationship of that practice, because I've made that commitment to that practice, and everything in life is making it very difficult. It's shining a light on that practice, and it's almost like there's this winky face emoji of spirituality kind of sitting in the ether, like just watching this, and I'm like, I'm doing what I'm called to do, aren't I not? And it's hard because you have this inner dialogue, you have this physical life, you have all of these things, and there's all this stuff pulling away from that very subtle gravity of spirit, of ether, of God, however you want to call it. And I find it fascinating because my mind is just being wrecked over and over again every day. And then this happens, this damn podcast happens, and there's these affirmations of, well, yeah, you can choose to suffer in that, or you can choose to be in that. What are you going to do? Are you going to suffer in it, or are you going to be in it? And I don't know. I now I'm just dragging on, but it's the stickiness of the ego is just ever present, and it is fascinating, but there was a peace in that moment. There was a calm in that moment, and there was a surrender, and there was a resounding chord that happened in that moment that really made me realize a lot of things that I'm going to come to fully realize after the fact. And I love that I fell apart, and she called me out for falling apart, and I don't know. It's good practice. It's very good practice.
Mm.
Because what are we searching for? What are we really searching for?
We or you?
Both. I mean, what am I really searching for?
Mm.
What am I looking for, looking to achieve that isn't already available or has been available?
That's the key. What you seek is seeking you. And just the very words of "I am a seeker" is like telling the universe you don't already have it.
Yeah. That yes.
I
That.
can't tell you how many writings I did in India, like because I'd go to India in the early days and spend months at a time meditating and walking and reading spiritual books and sitting with spiritual teachers. And I would write, because the spiritual teachers would say that,
Yeah.
very thing I just said, and just writing it and understanding intellectually, but not really getting it viscerally.
Yes.
And then it wasn't overnight. It was just all of a sudden I realized I was no longer seeking, that it was already here. Like I really got that everything was already here.
Yeah. And it is a visceral feeling. It's not something that you can intellectually articulate. It seems like, and I love those the stories you guys shared about the Adyashanti retreats, and a good teacher is a reflection of what the student needs, and being water and being malleable and just having no identity to the point where you can just be whatever that person needs in that moment. It's not about teaching. It is about reflecting. It is more about being a mirror. I mean, that, if you're not paying attention, you could have looked at that and you could have said, well, what did Patty teach? She didn't teach a lot. She didn't like have this story of this, you know what I mean? Like you could see that, but the profoundness of what she was teaching was exactly what I needed. And it was so heavy, and it was so present, and it was so aware that it was more than any words that she could have said. And that's the point about being a good teacher is really about being nothing at all, because you're void of the identity, and that's something that, man, sorry, I'm spiraling out. I can go to so many, because early on in my spiritual quest was, you'd see gurus, and you're like, oh yeah, I need to find the best guru. I need to find the guy, and it's like, and then you can sit there and you can judge, spiritual gurus. You can judge everybody to the point where it's like, well, are they really a spiritual guru because they got a lot of money? And it's like, yeah, but do you know how many people just give people money because of what they do for them, and they're not doing anything? And that's probably the biggest joke of it all, is to be a great teacher is to not teach from your own center, but to reflect what the student needs. And this sounds like I'm downplaying the teachers. I'm not at all. I am fascinated in having that realization and realizing so much of what she said is the teacher is within you. The answers are within you. When we're looking for it outside of ourselves, thinking we don't have it, thinking we are not complete.
The universe is within you.
Exactly. Thank you for putting it that way. We are convinced we are small. We are convinced we are inadequate. We are convinced we are broken. We are convinced we are traumatized, but we won't deal with the traumas. We are convinced on so many levels that we aren't godliness, that we aren't universe, that we aren't source, that we aren't spirit.
And then we act out of that. It's like that we're stuck in the matrix.
Yes.
Yeah, 95% of people are stuck in the matrix thinking that they are their thoughts, they are their emotions, they are the constructs of what they think life should be. And then what happens is they act out of that separateness and out of that smallness.
Yeah.
And then we have the chaos in the world that we have.
Yes.
And yet it's it's the play of consciousness. It's Sanskrit, it's the Leela, it's the play of consciousness. It's what's supposed to be to wake up, because Patty was definitely an exception, and even Dawn to somewhat, but even Dawn seemed to have more questions than Patty did.
Yeah.
But most spiritual seekers they're the prod, like Tom said, the quote that I used in Tom's interview was, pain is the greatest prod
Yes.
to awakening to God, awakening to the truth, awakening to the consciousness, to awareness, to the truth of your own, to the truth of existence, right?
Yeah.
And so the Leela, the play of consciousness, the fact that there are many people playing small in the world, it's all that they know, is what's needed. It's what's supposed to be. It's the Maya, what you call the minutia sometimes. That's what awakens. That's the spark of awakening, is when the minutia and the pain and the suffering gets too much. Like when you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And and everybody's bottom, like a drug addict, is different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what, and even Patty said she was for a while kind of convinced that, am I going to wake up? Am I going to awaken unless I have pain, unless I have struggle? Am I not? And that's what was really startling is her answer was, and then take this too. Take my non-suffering, take my non-struggle, take my non-pain. I didn't understand. I don't intellectually understand what she means by that. Like, I wanted to say, can you say more about that? But I couldn't say, could you say more about that? Because I felt that very, very deeply. I felt it in such a way that I didn't want her to explain more of that meaning. And that is when I started to devolve, because I feel like I'm in this middle ground of, I can intellectualize all the things we're talking about. And there's this sparking, this arcing of realization of that truth. And it's becoming more regular. It's almost like these little, it's like you're striking flint and steel and you're getting these sparks, but you're just doing it over and over again. You're trying to light a fire. And what's funny is we are the fire. We're just trying to recreate the fire, We're trying to recreate the light in a lesser way in a lot of ways. And that's what I feel this part of it is there is something stuck, kind of like with what Patty says. Is, for me, I struggle with saying, well, I'm an awakened person. I'm not an awakened person. I am awakened. I have awakened. I experience awakenedness. And then you start to say that it's like, I don't know how to describe this, and I don't know how to talk about it, and I don't know how to accept it for myself. I don't know how to accept. Maybe I don't know how to accept that I am enough, that I have within me the all of the universe. I have within me godliness. Maybe there's something stuck within me that wants to be convinced it is lesser than. And that's makes me comfortable moving through life that way. I mean, that's when it starts to get all paradoxical and confused, right? It's like, when you start talking about it, you're like, this is so fucked up that you'd want to live your life less than. But it's not that I want to. I don't know how to surrender to that allness. I don't know how to let it all go, and I don't know how to have the faith and jump off the cliff and fly. Maybe I'm afraid to fly into that ether or allow.
Well, that's a story too. The afraid to fly. I don't know how. You just do. You just do.
Right.
You just do. But you just keep asking the questions. I mean, that's what I do. Is I just keep. I go back to Ramana Maharshi and Adyashanti and all these teachers are sort of that. It's the self-inquiry path.
Yeah.
Of of who, I don't know how. Well, who is the I? Who is the I that wants to where it thinks it has to? And it's not like, you don't say who is the I and then just keep repeating it like a mantra. You actually look for it. Like you can find your hair, you can find your skin, you know that there's blood inside here, you can find your bones. But the I in me is the most used and popular words in all languages. I and me.
Yeah.
And yet, if you try to find the I within yourself, you cannot find it.
Yes.
It's a construct. It's an idea. And that's what the self-inquiry path is about, is I'm afraid to do this. Well, what I is afraid of it? Anytime you have an I in there, you go back to where is the I? And that's what finally did it for me. It's like, I couldn't find the I. There is no I. The thing that we refer to all the time, you cannot find it.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about my I.
You can talk about it.
I know.
But you cannot find it.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like I've been in I've been on the intellectual diving board. And even still, even after the experiences that we've talked about, and the realizations and this and that, there's still this intellectual diving board that it feels like. That's the visual that's coming to my mind, and and I don't even feel bad or anything that well, that's the funny thing, is like the stickiness is going away. So these ideas and these constructs, it's funny, like the more every single thing I say about it, I just start laughing, and I'm just like, that's not real. That's not true. And I can see all that. But it's like the spiritual practice of doing that over and over again. And maybe I'm attached to that spiritual practice of doing it over and over again and going through that process. Maybe I'm still attached to the process that I used to stop the process of these, and it's like, fuck, shut up. Just shut up inside. Just shh. Maybe I've had too much fucking coffee today. I don't know. All I know is what you said is probably true. We just spoke to an angel. Because it's just peaceful. It's just presence. I'm very thankful for that, man. That's going to ruin me in a lot of ways, in a lot of beautiful ways.
And that's what you are. Whatever you see is what you are.
And that's going to ruin me too.
Right? When you see pain, you are pain. When you see jealousy, you are, you know what I'm saying? It's like that mirror. So when you see an angel and you see peace and expansiveness, that's what you are.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I hope that gives people enough to chew on, and I hope they enjoyed that.
I can't believe the next podcast is next Monday, would be the last Monday before Christmas. And then there's only there's only 2 more Mondays before the end of the year.
Wow. Who do we have next week?
Next week is Trisha, Tom's wife.
Beautiful.
And then the week after that is Ariel Ford.
Yes.
Who's written many books, who's a big influence for me.
Awesome. Well, that's ending the year on a bang.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, as always, I'm very appreciative of you as a co-passenger of my journey. It's always fun. It's always entertaining. I appreciate the background work that you do to make this all happen, and thank you for inviting me into this space, man.
I love you, Sean.
Love you too. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.